You know what mindset is? Super complicated. It's the story you tell yourself. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tendency, everybody, sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, where a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends, as it has to have. Circle that word, depends. Circle that word on a habitual. Underline that word, thought process, and attributions. If you're using your words better and you're telling yourself better stories, you're going to feel better and your relationships will improve. When we learn to think about our thinking, we become alive in a new way.
Welcome to the Strength Connection podcast, a show to share stories, insights, and experiences in strength, physically, mentally, and spiritually. I'm Michael Krukowski, host of the Strength Connection, and I'm so grateful that you can join me today. So in these episodes, I connect with some of the most inspiring and successful individuals to chop it up and learn from true life experiences that have helped them become who they are, the strongest versions of themselves. One of the greatest ways I've always learned the most important lessons is through stories. We all have them, and they make us who we are. So let's dive in. Here we go. So the power of our words and the stories we tell ourselves, we know it plays a major role in our strength and in our lives, but often we just leave it there and not diving into practical ways to change our language and develop a stronger story. And that is where Mark England has been doing with Enlifted. So Mark is a former MMA fighter and a mindset performance coach. And I was connected with him through a friend who said, if you want to talk mindset in a practical way, you have to speak with Mark. So we did. His energy and enthusiasm is ridiculously contagious. And along with this great talk, he gave some key exercises to start doing right away to improve your personal narrative and change your story. So with that, let's get right to it. Before we do, please show your support for the show. Make sure you subscribe and rate the podcast wherever you're listening. And also check out our YouTube channel, The Strength Connection. All right, your support means everything to me, guys. I sincerely appreciate you. Thanks very much. Let's get on with the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. And Mark, thank you so much for jumping on. How you doing?
Michael, thanks for having me on. I'm doing great, buddy.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm really pumped to chat with you today. I've got a chance to check out Enlifted after chatting with Megan Henry, who was telling me all about your work. I'm fascinated by this topic of words, the power of words. I think personally for me, a few years ago when I started to get into intuitive training on the physical side of not just going so deep into a structure and trusting your body, kind of trusting your own intuition, that's when I got into a lot of journaling practices and realized how powerful the words that we say, not just out loud, but internally to ourselves. It has such an impact on the journey that we have. And since then, it's been such an interesting, topic of conversation and just to dive into personally. So first off, thank you so much again for coming on and taking the time to kick this off, to just go a little bit back of how kind of you got started with this. I believe you were an MMA fighter and then things really changed when you went over to Thailand. Is that correct?
Yeah. Oh boy, did they. Yes. Once upon a time, everybody, I thought I was a tough guy. It's true. I wrestled in high school and got into jiu-jitsu in college, and which quickly turned into cross training with Thai boxing. And I had a handful of MMA fights back in the late 90s, before it was called MMA. It was called no NHB, no holds barred, or Vale Tudo, which is Portuguese for no rules, or human cockfighting, if you want to get all John McCain about it. And it wasn't cool. It was not cool. It's cool now. It's like, because everybody knows about it. Yeah. You would tell people that, and they'd be like, why would you want to do something like that?
Yeah, exactly.
So it was fringe.
Then Dana White built an empire and things changed quite a bit.
Yeah, yes, he did. Fastest growing sport in the world. And I won a couple of state kickboxing titles. And combine that with my girlfriend from college, whose parents were Southern Baptist missionaries, and they had been all over the place. So I was hearing stories of all these places, and they would talk about living in Bangladesh like it was just like going to the beach for a couple weeks for for me. And I'm just some Virginia guy, right? And so, oddly enough, we get an opportunity to move over to Thailand and teach. And the plan was to go over there for a year, teach. I was going to train, come back, and go pro. And that's very not what happened. So 2002, February 2002, I'd only had my passport for 2 years. This was a very big deal. I had 3 going away parties. And so we move over to Thailand, and I got the exact opposite of what I was expecting and wanting. 6 months in, I'm having my second knee surgery. And the doctor told me, I remember it was like it was yesterday, he goes, your career as a fighter is over. You could become a very good swimmer. And I'm making pictures of doing laps next to grandma at the pool, not what I had in mind at 26 years old. And so, Michael, darkness descended.
Yeah.
And I used.
Was he saying that seriously, or was he just kind of trying to put a spin on it?
No, he was serious.
Yeah.
He was serious. Thai guy, broken English. He was very serious. Thinking that would maybe lighten the mood.
Right.
Fair enough, buddy. And so darkness descended, and I took that scenario, that incident, and I used it as the final piece of damning evidence in a case that I was secretly making against myself, that I was not good enough. There was something wrong with me, and I was somehow doomed to fail. And now I've got the final smoking gun. It's true, dude. You're a loser. You went for it, and you failed massively. And here's the evidence. And I didn't laugh for an entire year. I don't recommend that. It's a very strange experience. I very likely didn't. I don't think I smiled authentically in an entire year, because I entrenched, and we'll go into the definition of it here in a little bit. Sure. I entrenched a dumpster fire of a victim mentality. And it consumed me. It took up all my mental real estate, sucked the joy right out of my life, turned my face just bitter. And my girlfriend, eventually she broke up with me. She couldn't. I turned into a different person. I turned into the loser that I was afraid that I was, that I always was. And after a year of doing that, I ended up living in Thailand for 10 years, which still sounds strange to say, but that's first 5 in Bangkok. I was an elementary school sports teacher, great gig. And the second half, I was a counselor, a coach at a cleansing resort. So anyway, year 1, my life sucks because I'm making it suck. And our vice principal comes back from this place called the Spa down on Koh Samui. Koh means island, so the island of Samui. And he goes, "Hey man, they're doing this really cool like cleansing fasting stuff down on this resort, and I think you'd really like it." And he gave me the website, and I looked it up, and I said, "You know what? I'll try that." Because I had seen right around that same time, I at least had the vision to look down. I was like, dude, are you going to be complaining about this when you're 55? Are you going to be that guy that had a woodish, and I wasn't going to be all that great of a fighter anyway. And I was like, are you going to be bitching about this when you're 55? And I saw that version of me, and I was like, dude, if you do that, then you really, really, really are the loser. So I go down to this resort, and I pay them to not eat. It's a great business model. I give them money. They give me a coconut and a plate with nothing in it and a yoga class once in the morning, and I have to sit there and starve and stare at the ocean. And actually, it was pretty cool. It worked. It got me out of my own funk a little bit. So much so I went back. And on the 3rd trip down there, I met a man named Barry Musgrave. he was doing a workshop on emotional detoxification.
We'll get right back to this episode, but first I want to tell you about Nabosu Technology. Nabosu is the leading company in foot care products created by the top functional podiatrist and human movement specialist, Dr. Emily Splickle and her team. Our feet are a connection to the earth and the foundation of all human movement, and it's often the most overlooked part of our body when it comes to health, fitness, and recovery. Personally, I never thought much of how the foot impacts my movement and strength until years ago when I found my intense sciatic pain I was dealing with was coming from a locked up midfoot and ankle issue. So after putting emphasis on this, my pain subsided completely, and since then I've made sure to take care of my feet before anything else in training. I use the Nabosu NeuroBall every day, whether I'm training or not, and I felt significantly better in both my barefoot strength training as well as running outside on grass and on pavement. Nabosu has the best products on the market, including the NeuroBall, recovery socks, splays, activation insoles, and the kinesis boards and mats. So to check out Nabosu Technology, click on the link in the comments or go to nabosutechnology.com and use the code CONNECTION and get an additional 10% off your purchase. Again, that's the code CONNECTION. Use it to get 10% off. All right, now let's get back to it.
And I laughed at it and I went. And what I saw changed the trajectory of my life profoundly forever. He talked about words. He talked about stories. He talked about identity. He talked about both of our favorite words, mindset. Mm-hmm. And then he said, is there anybody who's stuck on a story? And this woman shot her hand up. And she shared the story of it was a nasty breakup. Shared the story of a nasty breakup that had happened 4 years prior. She's still pissed off about it. That whole time doesn't apply to the emotional body thing. That's a real thing. She's still mad about it and hadn't gotten in a relationship since. And he had her tell the story 3 times. First time through, he didn't touch any of the words. And during and at the end, she's crying, she's angry. Cool. Second time through, same story. He changes a couple of the words and the story loosens up. And you could see it. And everybody was starting to lean in now. Like, oh, wait a minute. This is interesting. Third time through, this guy knew what he was doing. He stopped her at the sentence, the spell, Michael, the definition of a spell. Webster's, not mine. If everybody, if you've got a pen and a piece of paper, I invite you to get it. I invite you to get it and write this down. 30, 50, 80. We remember 30% of what we hear, 50% of what we write, 80% of what we teach or share. And if you pick up a pen and write down some of this stuff, you're going to get 20% more retention, which is a big deal. The definition of a spell, Webster's, not mine. A spell is a word or a combination of words of great influence. That's it. Mm. No bubbling cauldrons, no witches and hats. Mm-hmm. Words, combinations of words, and it goes both ways, everybody. There are expansive spells and there are constrictive spells. Mm-hmm. I'll tell a couple of stories here in a moment because I'm in the middle of this one.
Yep.
And he stopped her at this particular sentence, which was holding the whole thing together. He did that to me. And he had to repeat it 3 times. He did that to me. Say it again. He did that to me. So everybody in the room is staring at that same sentence. And he said that last word, scratch out me and put in himself. And it was such a radical departure from the story that she'd been relentlessly telling herself. It was clunky. Some air came out first because she was in a stress response in context to the story. Mm-hmm. It was like, he, and it goes up at the end. Yeah. He did that to himself because it's a question. Right. And then you see it catch more air. He did do that to himself. And then she starts talking about, it actually turned out worse for him. Oh, by the way, the breakup was her and her friends got a house down at the beach. Mm-hmm. Her boyfriend and his friends got a house next door. add alcohol, press play. He hooked up with her best friend in front of everybody one night and then dumped her in front of everybody the next night. That's a stinger of a breakup,
Yeah.
right? And so she told that story, and that sentence, he did that to me, that was what held the whole thing together. It was forcing her to create the victim villain mental imagery. He's in the picture, she's in the picture, he's doing that to her again this morning, even though it happened 4 years ago, because that's how our imagination works. If we keep telling ourselves the same story, we get the same pictures and the same feelings and emotions. It doesn't matter how sick she was of feeling like shit about that whole thing. As long as she kept putting those words together in that same way, she was getting the same meaning. Which she was taking it personally. It was about her. She wasn't good enough. It's called atelophobia, the fear of not being good enough. And so she goes, he did that to himself? He did. He did do that to himself. And she starts talking about he lost friends and all this other stuff. And then finally at the end, she just walked herself right out of it, dude. She goes, that was never going to work out in the first place. He was actually really weird.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, whoa, what just happened? And I go like this. Not actually, as I didn't like point, but I did in my mind, because I had a he did that to me story too. He shouldn't have been kicking that hard. We were just warming up. So I had a villain in my story. And I played the same story every day. See, the definition, folks, here's another thing to write down. Most people have never heard the definition of the victim mentality, much less written it down and thought about it. I'll do this twice if it's okay. I'll do it slow the first time so everybody can put pen to paper.
Sure.
And then I'll speed it up and create some context. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. That's slow. Here it is fast. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends, it's a tendency, everybody. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, where a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends, as it has to have. Circle that word, depends. Circle that word on a habitual. Underline that word, thought process and attributions. That second sentence is right between the eyes, right where it belongs. The victim mentality depends. It has to have a habitual, which accurately implies duration and addiction. Thought process. What's a thought process? We all have one. It's how we use our words. It's how we put our words together. That's your thought process. And then attributions. What's an attribution? It's a characteristic. And the characteristic we pay the most attention to here at Unlifted is the breathing. So in my personal and professional opinion, a conversation about mindset without the definition of the victim mentality and a conversation about how breathing influences how we believe what we believe and what we believe, it's somewhere between hard and impossible to have a holistic conversation about mindset without those two things.
Right. It's that part you said there about the definition, and that second sentence, I think, is just so key right there. It depends on a habitual process. And I remember hearing that and then going back and using the context of the story, like, shit's going to happen in life. You're going to get breakups like this. This was a nasty one. You don't wish that on your best friend or anybody in there, but these things do pop up. And then I'm thinking of probably like the conversations now that she's having with herself, and then probably with her friends who are saying it's this habitual process of staying within that those same stories, that same sentence put in that saying of he did that to me. And then all of a sudden, once it builds that habit in there, then it's like I said, it's like a snowball going downhill. Then it's probably so hard to just catch it. You're not even recognizing what you're saying anymore because you're so used to saying it over and over again. Because in the height of that story, right? You probably feel validated for saying these things. Yeah, this guy's an asshole. He did that. And that's making you feel better in that moment because it feels so shitty that you're getting some reprieve from it. But then, it's like these things happen, but it's our own mindset that can either, deal with the pain or make it personal hell for a long time afterwards.
I worked with a woman once. Yeah. So on that, 1,000%, or make it personal hell for a long time, years, decades. I worked with a woman once, and once we got through a couple of sessions, she goes, "I've had the same relationship with 5 different men." History doesn't repeat itself, folks. It rhymes. And she had the same relationship with 5 different men because she had the same story of men going into each one of those relationships, which was men can't be trusted, which came from when her parents got a divorce and her mom was raging pissed about it the whole time she was a kid and told her many, many, many times, you can't trust men. You can't trust men. Men can't be trusted. You can't trust men. So rocket science, guess what she believed? Guess what parents say, that influences kids 1,000%. So she grows up with that story, and then she walks out into her adult life and she wants to have loving connections with people and have good relationship, but she's got this thing called an opinion, called an idea, called a belief system in the back of her head, influencing her reticular activating system, RAS, which that's the lens that we see things through. It's just like a pair of binoculars, and our language plays it. It brings things into focus, brings things out of focus. And guess she never trusted men. And so 5 different guys that she could have had 5 different relationships with, she had the same relationship with 5 different people. That's how that works. And it works. It's impartial. That's the good news. It's not this thing that's just out to get us. And I'm not talking about the victim mentality. That thing is out to get us. Right. And it wants our friends. It wants our friends. It's like the worst multi-level marketing scam ever. It wants because it wants everybody to believe you. It wants because once if I kept telling that same victim story, I would have found people to drama and trauma bond with. And eventually that's my entire peer group. And now I got this echo chamber, and everybody's it's just like that woman, you can't trust men. If she kept doing that, and she actually already did, all of her friends were they had the same story, and so they agreed with everybody, and now you're really in deep shit. I hope it's okay if I drop
100. Yeah, drop it.
You're really in it. If all of your friends are agreeing that you are a victim of circumstance, like maybe not just one bad thing that happened to you, I'm just saying across the board, and life sucks, and you can't trust men, and there's no opportunity out there, and women only want one thing, and you can never get ahead, and all of this. If that's the story that your peer group is sharing, I recommend walking out, leaving, because that's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's super dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I see this so much in the health and fitness world that I've been in forever is, it gets stuck in the same narratives of I can't drop weight, or I can't excel here, or this is a struggle. I'm trying to do this. And it's all these words and this same pattern, as you said. I love what you said. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. It's like it's all of a sudden it's the same 3-week, 4-week cycle where you're on and then all of a sudden it's off, and it's in this head. It's like, oh, I just can't seem to get over this hump. It's like, no, in many ways you're probably, that's hump kind of, you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop because the feeling that you're going to get at that moment. Because it goes back to, you said, what was it? The atelophobia. It's that, the fear of not being good enough. Like that is so prevalent, and it's something that it seems like we don't talk about it as much because that's a really uncomfortable thing to probably admit to yourself. But as you described in your story, when you heard this from the woman and then you realized it in yourself from that guy in sparring, all of a sudden now it's hard to hide from the truth when it's right in front of your face.
It's hard and painful.
Yeah.
And to say that that's pervasive in the fitness industry is and we've done a decent amount of work, a decent amount of business in the fitness industry without being in the fitness industry. So real quick, everybody, I'm one of the co-founders of Enlifted. I'm the head coach. I deliver all of our trainings. I'm a professional podcaster, goer honor. This is my 360th podcast talking about one single thing, which is the power of words and stories. And a lot of those conversations, I graduated group 37 a couple of hours ago, level 1. So we certify coaches and how to dismantle the victim mentality and then all the other stuff. I graduated group 37. So that's in 10 people per certs. So that's 370 coaches that we've got. And we've been running those over the past 4.5 years. 65% of our coaches come from the fitness industry. 65% of the podcasts that we go on are in the fitness industry. And that's been that way since 2017. And I lived this, not only lived this, but I've had a lot of conversations with people in the fitness industry about the real pre-workout in the fitness industry is the victim mentality. That's the real pre-workout. That's the thing that gets people, I'm going to make him want me again. Oh, yeah, I'm going to get in there. I'm going to show them. I'm going to prove that I'm not scared, because that's what I was doing. I fueled and wrecked my fight career with the story that I'm not good enough, and I'm going to prove to everybody that I'm not scared, because I was scared. Because I had some experiences, some fights broke out on the playground. In elementary school, I can remember 2 of them, and I ran the other way. And then I got bullied in middle school, and I'm like, fuck this. I'm going to turn myself, I'm going to get dangerous, and nobody's going to pick on me again. And it was this outer hard shell. And on the inside, it was this scared little kid story. And dude, I trained the entire time that I was training and fighting with my breath trapped in my chest. You hold your breath while you're doing things like that, lifting heavy, competing, like stuff's going to break. Stuff's going to break. I broke myself with a victim mentality and terrible breathing mechanics.
So when you found that in yourself, and you realized that what the woman was saying about the guy who broke up with her, and you saw that yourself, what was the process then after that you started working with to change the narrative in your story? Because it's one thing to notice it. And I think a lot of people, we do that. Like, we know, oh yeah, like this is what I've got, like this is where I'm at. But then the actual next steps of changing that narrative and changing that story, what was your steps to do that?
Yeah, it was horrible. It was horrible. It was terrible. I was irate. And I'm sure the audience was like wanting me to say, oh, he had this moment,
and the sun shined,
and then the birds came down and one landed on his shoulder. And
we're not sponsored by Disney. It's okay.
It was just so much easier. Everything was easy. No, it was horrible. And so that workshop where I saw the woman go, he did that to himself. That was the first half. The second half, the facilitator paired us up with people, and one person was the coach, one person was the person working on a story, and he paired me up with this woman, and he's like, okay, work on something. And so I was like, oh, hey, what do you want to work on? And she started telling me this story of this problem that she had, and I had 15 minutes to work on her with her, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? And then he goes, okay, switch. And I look at her and I go, I'm sorry, I'm leaving. I'm not talking to you about anything. I wasn't talking to anybody. I was so mad. And it made it worse that I was the one creating that story. So it really is the best of news, and it's the worst of news. Mm-hmm. The best of news, sweet, I'm creating my own story. Shit, I'm creating my own story. Yeah. And so I was super pissed, and I stayed super pissed. I was pissed for a couple of years after getting involved in it, and I did take action. So I got up from that workshop and I went straight to an internet cafe and I downloaded an 86-page manual on how to do this work on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back to my just straight back to my bungalow and I started working on some stories because I knew that, yeah, okay, fine, you're pissed, you turn yourself into a grown ass man, baby, and the whole world's out to get you, and you're a loser, and you're a victim of life, and yeah, fine, and that sucks. And if you keep doing this, what you're going to get is 1,000 times worse than what you got right now. And that scared me. I was like, I'm okay, fine. I'll go into this stuff. And eventually things started loosening up and I started to peel the layers of the bitterness and get to the anger. And I kept going and I peeled the layers of the anger and I got to the disappointment. And I peeled the layers of the disappointment and I got to the sadness. And I peeled the layers of the sadness and I got to the fear of me not being good enough. And I have my moments just like everybody. And me now versus me 20 years ago, it's a completely different story. It's a completely different person. And so whatever stories y'all got, trust me, you can change them. That's the business I'm in. And it's going to take some time and it's going to take some elbow grease. And it actually, it's a good thing because it makes the path and the victory of transforming your mindset. Hey, get a load of this. You know what mindset is, everybody? We actually have a definition. Here at Enlifted, we actually have a definition. Go out there and talk to somebody, the professionals that talk about mindset a lot. Ask them what's the definition of mindset? And they're very likely going to give you some big philosophical clunky answer that's complicated and takes 5 minutes to explain. And then good luck implementing it. Mm-hmm. Okay. And most of them won't even have a definition. No, you know what mindset is? Super complicated. It's the story you tell yourself.
Yeah.
That's what your mindset is. That's what your mindset is, everybody. It's the story you tell yourself to yourself about what you can do and what you can't do and what is possible and what isn't possible and what you do deserve and what you don't deserve. And guess what? None of those are on the periodic table of elements. None of that stuff, there are units of measurement. It's like you measure, okay, we're going to go out and measure the driveway. It's 9. Nothing ever works out for me's and 4. Why should I even try? No, the stuff that rules our world, it's opinions. And a lot of times it's coming from stuff that happened in your childhood. Okay. And if you want to get in there, there's no such thing as getting over something. It's never happened. There's no getting over it. There's no going around it. There's no going under it. If you go in it, you go into it to go through it. Joseph Campbell said, any feeling felt all the way through is bliss. And most people get stuck right in the middle because it gets worse on each end. It burns going in. It's like a spicy Thai dish. These memories, they burn going in, they smolder while they're in there, and they burn coming out. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to a Thai food restaurant and get the hottest shit they got, get it Thai hot and eat it, and message me in 48 hours, assuming everything's working. You'll get what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so there's a little bit of sting involved, sometimes a lot of sting involved in processing this stuff, but that's nothing compared to bumping up into it for just 3 or 4 decades. That's the real scary shit if we get honest.
Yeah, I love that definition of mindset because it is so simple. And I think we argue with complexities so much just for the sake of arguing with complexities. It's kind of like asking, what's the best exercise? You put 10 coaches in there and it's a 30-hour debate about there when in reality, it's whatever one works best for the client with the goal that they have. It's like, you can break it down. There's more to it from there, but I love how you just broke it down there of just the story you tell ourselves, because that's an ever-changing thing. right? It's like as you experience more and more, things are going to change, and then you're going to evolve, and then you're going to grow. But what you said there about all the different steps of anger, of disappointment, then sadness, then also, am I good enough? It's like those steps going on. Like that's the first thing that thought of my head was the great movie Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze when he's cleaning up the bar and he's like, guys, it's gonna get worse before it gets better. And it's like, and everybody's like, what are you talking about? Because they just had a great night. They figured shit out. He's like, oh, yeah, this is going to be way worse afterwards. But what I'd love to ask is like, when you're going through that process, it's getting worse, but you said there's moments of clarity in there. Like, is there something tangible that you feel in those times of like doing the practical things where you're like, okay, I'm on a good track? Because this is where I feel we do get stuck in like the physical versus the mental strength side, where like physical, it's like, okay, if I'm doing 135-pound deadlift and then I go up to 155, that's measurably okay, I got stronger. But mindset, it's so much on our feelings in there, and it can change. So is that something that you saw, kind of those, okay, I'm on the right path moments during your time?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And everybody knows when they're focused on the thing that they should be focused on. Okay. Because that has a certain feeling to it. You know, everybody knows when they're procrastinating.
Yep.
Everybody knows when they're procrastinating. Why? It's not because someone comes up and tells them, hey, you're procrastinating, or whoop, like gives them a procrastination readout. No, it's because we know what procrastination feels like. We also know what staying focused on the right thing feels like. We know what building momentum feels like. And yeah, for sure. You'll get positive feedback from yourself in a form of feelings and emotions, okay? And also other metrics. Like if you stay focused and consistent and keep going into the gym and do what your trainers tell you, okay? Not overcomplicate it, not overthink. You'll get stronger. So that's a positive metrics. But as far as the mindset is concerned, people know when they're making progress.
Yeah.
And a lot of it comes down to their feelings.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Their feelings and you know, how are their relationships?
Right.
You measure those two things. If the work that you're doing on your story, so we can just take out mindset out the conversation and put story in there, which guess what your story is built of, folks? Words. And we'll get into some words to get this real practical here in a second. If you're using your words better and you're telling yourself better stories, you're going to feel better and your relationships will improve. Okay. And if you're feeling better and your relationships are improving, then bet the farm that you're doing a good job on your mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we've got language games. We've got language games to help people understand contextually, give context to it, what we're talking about when we, especially that second sentence for the victim mentality. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process, so certain words have to be in there. We've got some language games to help people have an experience with this conversation, because it's nice to listen to people talk about stuff. Mm-hmm. Take out stuff and put in mindset, story, stuff like that. It's I'm going to say it. It's even better when people feel it. Mm-hmm. So are you okay if we do a couple of easy language games?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Hey there, audience. If you got a pen and a piece of paper, grab it. You probably already have. Michael, do you have a pen and a piece of paper?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Cool. Write this sentence down. This is very easy stuff, folks. How can I ever get over this? How can I ever get over this? So write that sentence down, and just on a because this is class. I'm a teacher. This is class. The faster the story goes, the harder it is to change. I'm going to say that again. The faster the story goes, the harder it is to change. And the fastest way to slow down the story is to get the words on paper. Not so you have proof, you have it in writing. Here it is in writing. It's true what happened. No, so you can think about your thinking, so you can observe your thinking. Alan Watts said it. He's one of my favorites. When we learn to think about our thinking, we become alive in a new way. And most people are not thinking about their thinking, also known as their mindset. Your mindset is your thinking. It's a story you tell yourself. It's your thinking, your speaking, and your writing. That's what your language is. That's how the story comes out. Most people are not thinking about their thinking. They're just thinking, and it's going really fast. The story is going really fast. And
so by that, like with that question, like you mean like as soon as you write that down, you start coming up with answers, to it immediately. So the faster things start coming in, that's what you need to slow down. That's where you need to step back.
That's part of it.
Okay.
So you wrote that sentence down. How can I ever get over this?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Read it.
How can I ever get over this?
Perfect. So he wrote it. He read it. So here's where the slowing it down. So we got it on paper. He read it. How does it make you feel? What kind of energy does that create?
The big word there was the how. Like that's popped out of me right away, of just how, because then I started to thinking of, okay, this is a problem that I can solve. This is something that I can work on.
Perfect. Let's make it even better. Scratch out the word ever.
How can I get over this?
What happens when you take out that one word?
It's the timeline on it is huge. Like all of a sudden it's that ever felt like it's this huge daunting task. It's this mountain in there, where this all of a sudden just seemed like just a task.
That's just one word, everybody. That one word, ever. It's known as a dramatics. Just, only, ever, never. How can I ever get over this? When people say it, that one word is going to spike the drama, okay? Turn a molehill into a mountain, and it's a presupposition. So you've definitely got a growth mindset, because most people don't focus on the how, they focus on the ever. How can I ever get over this? And so that's not a question. That's a statement of I'm screwed. It presupposes that I can't do anything about it. So this is the way things are. Woe is me. We take out the word ever, and the drama comes down. How can I get over this? So it presupposes I can get over it. And then the mind starts looking for options, ways to do it. And in your case, ways to speed it up.
Right. That is powerful. And how easy it is that we just throw that word in there, just throw these words in there like nothing. It's just a throwaway sentence that you get in there. Like always. Oh, this always happens to me. And I remember when I talked with Dr. Nate Zinzer, and he talked about that work in his book on confidence, about just changing those two words of like, how can I do it, to let's see what I can do here. Of just like when you're going into something like, let's see, it's like, that little shift now turns it into, oh, I'm into this. This is an experiment that we're doing to see what I can do. Yeah, it's amazing, those small little things, like versus the big one that we always talk about in fitness is like that, need versus want and stuff like that. And like cliches that come out, cliches are tough because it seems like they lose some of their truth because they're said so much. It doesn't mean that they're not true anymore. It just means that they've been spoken so many times that just because it's familiar doesn't mean that it's still not true. And just watch those words and see what happens when you change those.
The conversation about words, I'm saying it again, it's becoming more common. It's becoming more common. And it's becoming, more common and just easier to have, which they're essentially the same thing. And that's a very big deal, because without the words, mindset's not practical. What do you mean? So when we add into the conversation about mindset, what words to use more of and why, only if you want to stay focused on what's important and keep the drama down and enjoy your life. What words to use less of and why, and what words to use more of and why. Now the conversation about mindset is practical. And the root word of practical is practice. So it's easier to practice using my language, thoughts, words, writing in better ways. And one of the fastest ways to do that is to slow the whole thing down. That's why when people start having these conversations and they start thinking about their thinking, especially with what we're going to do next, their emails and their texts change because they've got that lag time. So what we're going to talk about now, everybody, is the gateway drug to the rest of your language. Have you ever owned a gym?
I did, part owner.
Got it. When you were out and people found out what you did you ever have anybody go, I think I might want to come in and take a class sometime?
All the time.
How many of those people walk through the door?
1 out of 100.
1 out of 100. And you know why?
If we left it at that, yeah. If you left it at that, yeah, sure, absolutely. Come on by anytime. Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yeah.
What would happen if they had said, "Oh, you own a gym? Can I come on to the class on Monday morning?" What do you think would have been the percentage of people getting themselves through the door with those words?
Yeah, 90%. Yeah.
What we just did right there, folks, is highlighted. I'm saying it again. The gateway drug to the rest of your language. It's called soft talk. And there's only a handful of keywords, and they are responsible. I promise you, they're in your language. If you're a coach, they're in your client's language. They're easy. Once you raise your awareness to them, they're easy to pluck out, and you'll see the guesses and the mights in emails. You're like, no, take that out, and everything tightens up, and you feel better, and you get a better response from people, and you don't sound like a joke. Because I think I might want to come in and take a class someday. You sound like a turd. You sound like a joke. The person you're talking to knows you're not coming in, and they're very likely not all that interested to talk to you anymore because you've just outed yourself, right? And forget what they think. What do you think of you when you say that stuff? Yeah. Hey, gentlemen, I dare you, go out. Don't do it, but you know what I'm talking about. Go out and go up to a pretty girl and say, hey, you think you might want to maybe go out on a date with me sometime? See how that goes compared to, I want to go out on a date with you. What are you doing Saturday night?
Yeah.
Okay. Write these words down, everybody. Here's the soft talk keyword list. Probably, perhaps, feels like, guess, maybe, could, might, possibly. I think I'm possibly drinking too much coffee. Sort of. Kind of. I'm kind of ignoring her. Potentially. Hopefully. Try. One day. Should. Almost like. It's almost like I'm procrastinating. And I dare you to take that piece of paper with those words on it. If it's a bunch of scribbles on like half a note card, then rewrite it on another piece of paper. Make your writing look pretty, and go hang it up for 30 days somewhere you're going to see it, and you will be shocked. You will be shocked, and you'll be shocked and pleasantly surprised when you go to, I think we might want to, and you take out the might and think and know we want to, or we will. You know, I guess we could, and you're like, nope, we can. Yeah. And your emails just get tighter and smoother, and your text messages, and people respond different. Oh, by the way, and then you'll start to use it in your speech. Okay, it'll become more natural, and then you'll sound different, and your confidence will go up. You cut those words in half, you're going to double your confidence, and it's going to take you roughly 6 months. You think I'm kidding? I'm not kidding, because these things. You didn't have any classes in high school about how to get junk words out of your vocabulary if you want to sound confident and, breathe well and get your shit done. Like no one has classes about that. It's all spelling, grammar,
Yes.
and regular definitions.
Boring
compared to, oh, hey, if you want to turn your life into a walking apocalypse, here, use these words. Create all the projections. Use the projections. You never let me live my life. She's always talking back to me. He never gives me the credit I deserve. Yeah, just go use a bunch of those words and use them a lot and see how things pan out. You're not going to like it. You're not going to like it. And even more, you're not going to like you. You're not going to like that version of yourself. And to make it even better, you'll get addicted to it. And to make it even better, as in worse, I'm being facetious, you'll attract friends that use their words in similar ways. And now you got a ship of fools.
Yeah. It's so powerful how you use those words. I'm going to do that personally myself. I did that about like 2 years ago when I started to look at how I articulated my own speaking, and I wanted to get rid of filler words as much as possible. And then realizing now, I think I'm back to that a bit. I even just used one right now from there. So just going back into this. And I was thinking, this is why you look at artists, specifically like musicians and rappers, who are so articulate with words. And why is it like that people look to that and it's almost like an awe-inspiring thing when somebody can spit out lyrics like that? It's because there's a confidence that comes out of that, because there's no fluff. It's so articulate. It's like a stand-up comedian. Like, they pack it down into such a perfect bit. There's no extra words in there that's needed at all. And it's a power. Like, it's a real weapon that you can use and that you can have. And as you said there, like, you do that for 6 months and see how different your conversations are, your texts are. And because being in that zone too, like, if you're using all this soft language all the time, you never know where you stand in a lot of things. Everything's so up in the air. And that's the hardest thing to be in your mind. Anybody who's been in a relationship and you don't know where you stand with somebody, that's like purgatory in your mind all the time. And that will affect everything that you do. So just that specific exercise right there of just looking at the words that you use is as powerful as any strength training exercise that I think you could do in the weight room.
He speaks the truth, everybody. Text me. We got our each other's. Send me your mailing address and I'll send you a packet of these things.
Perfect. It's awesome.
Yeah. I'm sending a bunch out to CrossFitters, the CrossFit gyms. So I'm going to the post office with a bunch of those. I'd be thrilled to send you some of those. Just put it up and leave it up and watch what happens. And yeah, I don't know if you use the words verbatim. I'm just saying, like, it feels very out of control. Yet when people say my life is out of control, what they're saying is that my story is out of control. When you get control of your story, and there's only one way that you get control of your story, and that's when you get control of your word choice, because that's what builds your story. That's what makes up your story. Words equal sentences, sentences equal paragraphs, paragraphs equal pages, pages equal chapters, chapters equal books. Period. End of story. Okay. And it's a practice, it's a path, and it will create so many different flavors of confidence in you by getting control of the words you use. You'll sound different. You will present yourself physically in space different. We've all talked ourselves into a bad mood, and you talk yourself into a bad mood and stay there and watch what happens to your posture.
Yeah.
And then we say things like, look at the words. I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders. I've got a heavy heart. I'm under a lot of pressure. And then same thing, because it goes both ways. Talk yourself into a good mood and stay there. And then you're chested and you're like, and look at the words. Oh, yeah. Things are looking up, or I'm over the moon, or I'm on cloud 9.
Yeah.
So our language, it places us psychogeographically speaking. Don't I sound smart in our imagination, whether we know it's happening or not? And most people do not know that's happening. And then they blame external circumstances. And then they fall for the trap, the trick of thinking that their problems, which are so big and complicated, the answer has to be equally as big and complicated. I'm here to tell you, no, that's wrong. That's false. Give me a pen and a piece of paper and somebody who wants out, and I'll prove it. The answer to these big, complicated problems is simplicity. Getting the story simplified. The thing, you know what complicated complexity wants more than anything else is for more complexity to walk in the door. Mm-hmm. It'll just it'll wrestle with that till eternity. Simplicity walks in the door, and complexity goes shit, because it just gets obliterated by it. It has no hook or anything into it. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the art of this work, is to simplify our stories, is to get clearer, to get space and clarity with our stories. And a lot of it comes down to writing. And I'm not talking about general journaling about things that are fucked up in your life, and then you leave the words there, and then I journaled about that. No, you just paid to get worse. You just paid like that. Mm-hmm. That's now you just got it in writing. No, get your words on paper so you can look at the words, so you can draft the story, as in make the word combinations better and more accurate. And very frequently they get shorter and sweeter. And then the big scary thing in your imagination turns into something that's like, oh, okay, yeah, I got that.
Yeah. Mark, this has been so powerful as we talked about before we jumped on air. I said, I can't stand the word mindset because mm-hmm. it's so inflated and there's so many million definitions, and how to simplify it down into it's the story that we tell. And within that story is the words that we say. And then actually the practical way that you can actually apply this into what you're doing in your life. And by everything that's meaningful, simplicity and consistency of just doing work on it, and you'll make huge changes. And I think it's so good. I love that you work with coaches on this, because mm-hmm. in coaching, been doing coaching for so long, it's so easy to get into the sets and reps and the external things of what we're doing and putting plans together. I call them the offense, where it's like, those are all offensive game plans that we look to score a touchdown, but we don't scout the defense. That's what's going on in our life that's preventing us from accomplishing this, which is the stories that we tell ourselves, the blitzes that are coming in at different angles, because that's always going to win, and it's always going to play a professional defense on us. And the way that you broke that down with the soft talk and actually going back and reading your journaling, I know I'm going to be practicing this, and anybody listening, like, this is one, and I don't jump on this on every podcast. Go in and re-listen to this, freeze frame it on that, so these soft talk words, and start putting this into play. Because if you're a coach, it's going to help other people. And if you're just trying to benefit yourself, you're just going to help yourself in that process. So, Mark, thank you so much, man. This has been a blast.
My pleasure. Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Michael, for having me on. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I appreciate it.
Yeah, if people want to check you out, go see more of your stuff, what you got going on. I know there's a wait list for certifications now, but what's the best place that they can go and check you out?
Enlifted.me. That's all about the certifications. We certify coaches. The conversation starts about how to dismantle the victim mentality for us and our clients. I deliver all of our trainings, mm-hmm. all the levels, all of it, everything. And then we have a podcast called Get Enlifted. It's all about coaching and words. And we do a live class a live coaching session every Tuesday night at 6 on our Instagram account at Enlifted Coaches.
Beautiful. All right. Guys, check the show notes for that. We'll have them all in there. Mark, you're awesome, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Listeners, I'll check you guys on the next one. All right, peace. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. And you'll also get exclusive access to the Strength Connection Mastery Seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait, go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.